Welcome to The Fix,
the new way to get your copy reviewed by two former copy chiefs.
because whether you're an aspiring copywriter or you've been in the industry for decades,
The best way to improve your work isn't to read books, blog posts, or online guides.
it's to see real writing, your writing, being reviewed and improved in front of your eyes.
And that's the goal of The Fix, to bring you inside a virtual writer's room
And watch along as we review, edit and rewrite real copy.
from real writers like you. So let's get straight into this week's episode. And remember, if you like what you see here,
Please share The Fix with anyone you think would find it valuable. It is completely free. Hello everyone and welcome to another episode of The Fix. Today we're going to be talking about blog posts in a similar way to the session we did a few weeks ago where I talked through I gave my take on how to write a webinar or an interview style promotion. We thought we would take different types of copywriting, different formats or different parts of the industry that, different pieces of writing that you may be asked to write and kind of break them down and give you our take on them. So Glenn, I don't know a lot about writing blog posts. I've written editorial in the past, but I've never been asked to write a blog post or been paid to write a blog post. So before we get into how you would go about doing something like this, when we talk about a blog post, what role do you think it plays in the career of a copywriter? Because it's not something I have a lot of experience with, but you do it a little bit more than me.
yeah, I mean, so the first thing we have a problem with when we use the word blog post is that blog is a bit of a crap word. Blog post is a bit of a, and it depends who you ask, of course, but like, what is a blog post? Is it a piece of content? Content opens up a whole fucking avenue of like nonsense and what have you. So there's all millions and millions of things. But for the purposes of this, what we'll say is that a blog post is usually a piece of content that is exploring a specific issue about the niche or the area of business or what have you that you're writing about. And how does it form as a part of copywriter's career? Well, that depends what you're offering, but some businesses will come knowing that they need X amount of content to constantly be there for readers or an audience, or they might have it do it for SEO purposes, for search engine optimization. So they've got a website that they need to constantly update or what have you. So businesses might come and are looking for a content writer. You might find that rather than copywriter, they'll be looking for content writer. There's a big old arguments about whether a copywriter is a content writer and all this kind of frankly pretentious nonsense. And this is another reason why I just don't like the word copywriter. Yes, you're looking to sell, but people say, oh, blog post isn't looking to sell. I would disagree.
So it's part of the marketing mix, but it may not lead to a direct sale.
Yes, unless, again, if you want to philosophize about it, which I would say a blog needs to serve a purpose, and we'll get to this, but ultimately you're sending, if we're in business terms, and it's unlikely that I'm not going to get someone just to write content for my website for fun, let's say I had an author website and I want someone to write some content for me because I'm lazy and can't be bothered. I still want you to eventually buy my book, or I want you to do something. So there is an end game to any piece of content. So to say it's not selling, I think that's a bit naive, and I think it's a bit blindfolded. So I think it's a piece of content that will sell in the long run, but it's doing a lot of other stuff in the meantime. So in terms of being a copywriter, it's usually, I find, a good way in for a lot of copywriters, because you have what used to be called content mills and all this kind of stuff, which are horrible and rubbish, but people are looking for content. It's what's more accepted. A business might not realize it needs a copywriter to write sales stuff yet, but they do think, because of all the crap out there on the internet, that they need content. So it's almost a way in that you can go, well, I can produce this content for you, but what if we actually use this for this reason, turned it into an e-letter, or turned it into this, or used it in this way, or put it all together into a sales letter. So I think it's like a gateway to writing more interesting direct response material. But
so lots of the things going to be common with copywriting and blog
Sure,
post writing.
yeah.
So you're trying to build engagement with your target audience. You're
Yep.
trying to have them coming back for more. You're trying to educate them
Yep.
about yourself, your brand or your business or your
Yep.
product or the benefits of that. But you may or may not have a direct sales link at the end.
Yep.
So that's part of that. So let's say you've been commissioned to write. Presumably, sorry, I'm a real novice when it comes to these things, mostly because I specialised in one thing and have just continued to do that. So I write only one type of thing. Presumably, you don't get asked to write one blog post, because what good would that do? It's going to be a batch of like.
What you often get asked to do is to produce content, and in a very vague and meaningless way of, oh, we just need content. And then you go, why? You go, usually, predominantly, the answer is because there was a Gary Vaynerchuk article on LinkedIn that told me content is king and you need to produce content, and there's cornerstone content and all these buzzwords, and you got people just going, oh, that's what you need to do in it, because then you get good SEO and you get on Google.
The internet does seem to reward volume.
Yeah.
I mean, it does reward quality as well, but
increasingly so, and that's where it's going. So it used to just do quality whilst the internet was figuring it out, but to be honest with you, they've kind of figured it out, and it's quality and specifics that are going to get you SEO. It's going to get you engagement. It's going to get, so it's kind of coming back to a purer, more authentic place.
But that may well be true, but you're still not going to be asked to write one.
No. So back to that question, people will come and say, we need some content. You actually, most of the time, I think, certainly in my experience and from the experience I've seen of others, is that you'll be asked to produce content about the business. You will probably be asked to come up with the ideas for what that content is, and what that should be. The client will usually have some ideas of the areas of their business that they want to talk about. So they might want certain things covering, but usually you'll have to do the legwork to find out what areas of the business you should be talking about and complement those things. You'd usually get an ongoing production. So I might need 3 pieces a week or something along those lines. So it's a quantity thing that you'd be briefed with. Side note for any copywriter out there who's like using this as a thing, you want to get to a point where you're not paying per piece, because there are some people go, I want a piece of content, and you go, okay, that sounds well and good, but I have a daily rate as a freelancer. If you want me to write one piece of content, it doesn't take me all day, but you kind of used my creative spark for that day and what have you. So it becomes very difficult. That's a issue.
Yeah, let's come back to pricing our time, because I think we can do a whole session
thing. But I would say you want to be looking to establish an ongoing thing, an ongoing relationship with that person who's asking you.
So how are you brainstorming different topics? So I mean, are you doing what, case studies, testimonials, backstory, use cases?
Yeah, specific details of, let's say you were a motor dealership, like the process of how you would sell a car, like the things that would happen when you came in, like you might just take, or you might focus in on a particular model of car that's available this week, or so it literally, as a natural copywriter, just immediately reel off 6 or 7 things that you could do. It is just a case of doing that.
Well, the reason I say those things is because there's a collection of ingredients which make up the sales process, and largely our job. If you're writing a sales letter, you put them all in an order and sequence them like this. But I work on projects where it's like, this is going to go on over 2 weeks. Yeah. But we still have to hit all of these different.
And that's the thing I see inherently, because I came from that world of ridiculously long sales letters. But then Bill Bonner, who was our boss, both of us at one point, being the very top of the pile, when he saw that direct response, like newsletter writing and the internet, he just started doing his letters in an email format over time. And his daily email is just one long direct response sales letter, if you like, because it's just an ongoing development of an idea, in the same way that all blog posts and all ideas are just an ongoing development of a bigger idea, of an explanation of that business as a persuasive tool to get you to buy something ultimately, kind of thing. So in that sense, yes, when you reverse engineer it back to the start, what pieces of content should you write? You should write about use testimonials, write experiences, write case studies, but also probably more than you would in a sales letter. It wouldn't be there, but behind the scenes stuff is big for me. I think that's really, you want to be showing what's going on behind the business and kind of giving a window into the business, more so than you would in a more direct response piece.
So let's say you've brainstormed your different topics, right? Yep. I'm going to talk about the history of the company, benefit A, benefit B, story of customer. You're going to break all these things down. What do you do next? I mean, I suppose I would have a way of approaching something like that.
So the first thing, when we get to actually writing it, there's one thing I'd say, but what I would do usually and I think this is the experience for most people, that you will have to like pitch a few ideas usually, and certainly even if you're pitching one idea, this will serve a purpose. But the first thing you need to do is establish, why are you writing that piece, and what do you want the reader of that piece to do? What is it for? Now, if that is a bit of a loaded question, but generally, if it's for an engagement, if it's to make you seem more human, fine. If it's to get better SEO on your website, that's as valid reason as any. But that's not really like a reason to do a piece.
Well, it's not a reason it's not a benefit to your audience.
No, but you find content production is so aligned, unfortunately, with SEO that will always almost come in as a secondary reason. But we'll kind of get to that at some point, because the way my process for creating any piece of content builds that in anyway. But the key thing is, you want to be establishing, what is the one thing, what do I want the reader to not necessarily do. So this is where we just depart slightly from direct response mentality of, I want them to get the credit card out, or I want them to do this thing. So it might not be necessarily such an explicit call to action, but what do I want them to either do, because you might want them to do something, I go and read another piece, or go and investigate more, whatever, or maybe think or feel.
Yeah. Where do I want them to be?
How do I want them to be at the end of this piece? And ultimately, what is the one thing I want them to take away from this piece? Because if you're trying to get them to do a load of stuff, we all know it's basic, like copywriting rule, but it's basic ideas rule. You go to a 12-day seminar, you're going away with one idea, and it's the one thing that you're going to remember is the thing. You may as well have got rid of all the other days of the seminar. You just want that one thing that will change that reader's perception, that their feeling, their understanding something. Before you start writing, you want that in your head. What I would do for the client is say, right, let's say you're saying here's 10 article ideas, or 10 pieces of content. You can already see about 1 million words for the same thing, but 10 content ideas. And then next to each draft headline, I would say, what is the purpose of that piece? So this is to establish, to build a close relationship with the business owner. This is to direct them to the case studies page. This is to do, so have the clear purpose for that piece.
And so that's where this clearly departs from, say, journalism. Because I mean, people ask me if I'm a journalist sometimes, because if I haven't really explained, if I just said I'm a writer or a copywriter even, sometimes people say, "What? So you're a journalist?" But no, because journalism it all has the same goal, to educate you on the news effectively. Yeah. I mean, I would say good journalism has another.
Yeah, let's not get into this.
But you know what I mean? But it's true that, I'm not a content writer, I'm a journalist. It really just means I haven't really thought about what each piece is there to do beyond be there. Yeah. But this is part of the marketing mix, so it's like keys on a piano. It's got to.
Yeah, I mean, content is such a silly word. I mean, people just talk about content as in like, I'm going to watch some content on Netflix. It's become such a meaningless thing.
I always hated it because it sounds like, like if you're insulating a house, you sort of fill the wall up with not polyfiller, like insulation. Just like pour more content in there. Yeah, I mean, it always used to feel
obscene, but I think for when it comes in the copywriting world, in the advertising world, in the business sense, it needs to have purpose. That's the point of anything, really. I mean, we'll get to philosophical, but it needs to have a purpose. Yeah. If it is just content, if you are writing it from that, you shouldn't be. But if the business is just doing that from a cynical point of view, just to fill out mass,
I know a lot of
go and have
businesses
another
do
conversation
that,
like with that, because it's wrong and it's just pointless. Like there's no point in doing it, and it won't be helping you with SEO. It won't be helping you thing, because people will land on it, go away from it, and then you'll be penalised for your SEO because no one's staying on your page and reading it because it's crap and it's pointless. So it really does pay to not get into that.
Okay, so we know what purpose.
Yeah.
So we've figured out what the structure of different articles is. We've worked out what the purpose of each of those things are.
Yep.
What do you do next?
So you need to write the piece, obviously. When you write the piece will come down to how much you know about what you're writing. Now, I seem to have a weird lucky knack, which is not universal, that I seem to, whenever someone says, oh, can you write about this? I somehow know something about that. Or I have a brother or a partner or a friend who's in that world. Yeah. So I will go and kind of speak to them, or I'll research what I don't know. But research is the same regardless whether you know someone or not. You need to go, right, well, what am I writing about? What do I need to know about this? Now, it's not probably as deeper research as you might do for a longer piece. Everything's relative. So if you're writing a 800 to 1200 word blog post, you're not going to need to like read the history of Western philosophy to write about philosophy kind of thing. You could write a piece about a small piece of philosophy. So you need to do your research. You need to figure out, again, always serving, if you've done the work, what is the purpose? What do you want? What do you need to get them to go away and do that thing? What does the reader need?
So on the research side, are you more looking for something almost like a nugget?
Yes.
Like just one little interesting point, anecdote,
yes.
story, just to give the reader a warm
yes.
glow of having learned something new.
Yeah.
But that's enough to then build a bigger piece of
Exactly, yeah. And it really is a kind of less is more. Like when it comes to the actual piece itself, at least in my opinion, it is about engagement. It is about writing a piece of writing that is engaging and fun and interesting to read. Why else would you read it? Especially if in theory you're not buying anything at the end, in theory, but you're reading it for entertainment. You're reading it for interest. So it's about the writing for me, not so much dousing you in detail. Don't get me wrong, there's sometimes blog posts of like 50 like ideas for this, and sometimes that might be a valid reason to do that. But more likely than not, and testing has found this over the years in emails and what have you, and I mentioned Bill before, but Bill used to always say about like people don't want to know 50 ways to do something. They want to know the one way to do it quickest and easiest, and it's that mentality, and I've taken that on board and had a lot of success with content production, is that you are trying to get someone to go away with one new thing. So they go, I really enjoyed that and found that interesting. I'll come back again and read more from that company or business. And that's ultimately what the unsaid aim is, that they're going to come back to you for whatever reason. Yeah. So you're looking for one little nugget, one little interest piece where you go, oh, I can write a story about that, or I can write a case study around that, or I can write a testimonial, or I can write around that one really interesting testimonial, rather than just having block testimonial, break it down, and I can write then he went on to say this, which shows why we're doing this, and break the testimonial down. So you only need one testimonial to write a 1200 word piece on it, kind of thing. So you're just looking for that one little nugget. That's your research. You're finding out, what can I get out of that? That's as much research as you should really need to do. Once you've got what you're clearly writing about, and you've got the purpose, then it's time to sit down and write it. So without heading off at the pass, the next thing I would do is to break down how you're going to write that piece. Now, most blog posts, most content pieces are around 800 to 1500, maybe 2000, probably getting a bit long, in my honest opinion.
I think if it's 2000, you probably want. It sounds like you want to break that into two.
Exactly. Yeah.
You
know, I know you know from writing daily emails and stuff like that. Humans have a capacity to like take on this information, and that's usually the right amount. So if you're around that area, around 1200, I find that you can break it down into 4 constituent parts, and that's how I like to try and break everything down. Around 200 to 300 pieces is usually a nice little riff of a section. Now, I've written it millions of times. It's in my book and everything. I write all content in a margin of like 13, and a certain font size so that it's like a column. And if you do that, it kind of works out that it just gives you a visual thing like you might read on a mobile or whatever. But that's widely available. You can find that. So I'd break it down to 4 pieces, and for each of those things, for each 200 to 300 words, you need to be making 1 point, and then you need to be getting on to the next piece. So even within that one article that's about one thing, you should have 4 different elements.
It was like little vignettes within the bigger. Yeah.
And then what I do is with that, before you're writing anything, just write a little subhead for each of those points of what are you going to say in that point? What is that particular little section about? And what is the point in that? So you should have basically a small contents page of 4 points that you're then going to fill in. And if you do,
how does SEO factor into this?
This will come back. You do the SEO check later on. Is my short answer. If you just work through this process, you need to trust that you'll get there, because I think one of the key things that most people, if you go in thinking about SEO, you're screwed, because you're going to write an unengaging piece of content that repeats the word red wines from Alsace 300 times because you think that's what SEO is. It's not. You need an engaging piece that is going to keep me on the website, keep me reading, and keep me engaged within that content, so that Google knows, or whichever search engine optimization you're trying, they know that when you search for these keywords, people stay on that page.
So reader first, algorithm second.
Yes. So not to say we don't worry about the algorithm, but do that thing. So you're trying to write an engaging piece. By having it clearly signposted and doing a logical piece all the way through and having yourself set in that contents, that's going to be a more engaging piece. Once you've got that little kind of contents for yourself, fill in the blanks. You'll be surprised how easier it is, because A, you've had a little bit of thought before trying to write, which you'll probably surprise yourself and realize how easy it is to write once you've thought about it, because most of us sit there and go, what should we write now? Whereas if you've got a little plan, you know, all right, I'm writing about that piece. So it gives you the freedom to go, how can I start this engagingly? How can I actually get into that? Then write freely, and this is a key part. Don't think about SEO. Don't think about too much about details. So I think it might have been John Ford. We credit him a lot, but he was formulative in our years when we were learning. But he used to, I'm saying it's him, it might not be John, but he used to say he just puts like XXX where you don't know, let's say it's £3.6 billion investment. He doesn't know it's 3.6 billion. He knows he needs to put a number in, but he'll just write XXX so he can write flowing copy and he can come back to the detail. I would do that with any details you're not quite sure about. You're more looking around flow here. You're writing a piece of entertainment at this point in your mind. You're teaching someone. You're engaging them. You're not worrying about the detail. If you know the detail, put it in. Don't get me wrong, but just write a piece of free flowing copy within those 4 headlines, like little subheads, and you should start to get to an engaging point. One tip I would give at this stage to keep you on track is, it's an old trick I used to do, but if you've got your purpose and you've got that, write that as the first line. So whatever you want them to take away, the reader, if you want to say, and that's why we like the colour blue, write the first line, and that's why we like the colour blue, and write it again immediately underneath it, and then write the article between those 2 lines. And any time that you're writing and you seem so far away from your concluding line, you realize that you've gone so tangentially off the point that you're away and you're in a different article. So it's a weird, it's very technical, but it just keeps you on track and you know where you're going. But ultimately, go to the end, write the piece out, have as many baths or cups of tea between doing that, as long as you want to take.
How many baths would you have?
I would recommend 1 after each piece, and then just 1 at the end to reward yourself. So 5 in all.
So if you've had a long day of writing,
yeah, and change the bath after 3 baths. Yeah, change the water after 3 would be my advice.
And right, so you've had 5 baths.
So once you've gone through that, you've obviously now got a bit of a thing. Now go add the detail in and put the details that you've left, obviously. And then once you've done that, you will naturally, this now comes down to what negotiation you were able to do, how much in literal business sense, can you afford to give this piece? And you know me, and you're the same. But you need to be practical. You can't be like letting everything rest for a day, like I might, because no one's going to pay you to do that. I've managed to get on people to understand that stuff. But if
you're just starting out,
if you're just starting out, you probably can't build in that luxury. I say it's a luxury. I don't actually believe that. I think it's essential, and I think all copy would be better if you waited till the next day. But at least go and make a cup of tea. Go and do something else. Do another piece of work. Start on another thing, and try and leave that piece of content for a little while, just to get your head off it. Then come back and review it and say, is there a better way into this? Spend a little bit of time, as much as you can afford, on the opening, because that's what's going to engage people. It wants to be an exciting opening. It wants to get you straight into the action. Insert all good copy rules here, kind of thing. But
we can probably park
exactly.
that, given we've
So do that. Once you've done that and you've got, so it's written well, then we can do the slightly cynical move of an SEO thing. That's what a lot of people are going to come from there. So if you know that you're doing a piece about red wines in Alsace, and it would be beneficial to have the phrase, the keywords, red wines from Alsace. I hope there's red wines in Alsace. There probably isn't. It's like Dutch wine. It's from Nathan Park. But you need to then go through and see if you can add that in. Not to the detriment of the flow of the copy, but can you just make it so there are them keywords in there?
Put it in brackets at
just
the end
in brackets,
of the first line.
Everything, and then I had a bath. But no, as much as you can, but do not, like, that is not permission to just like hammer it in there. It's, in theory, and as you get better at writing, you will just get this stuff in. It will become natural, and you'll realise that the places that you don't need it.
But presumably it's connected in some way to the purpose, because the purpose should be connected to what your audience might want or be interested in, and by definition those are the sorts of things that should appeal on an SEO level.
Yeah, of course.
So it's kind of all tied in, like,
yeah.
I guess the only time would be, sometimes it's nice to throw in something that's completely odd, because we all know that rules will be made to broken in lots of ways. So like, you could write 9 pieces of copy about the gold market, but the one that's about, you know, a raw piece of chicken is the one that somehow cuts through. Now that won't have any SEO benefit. So
yeah,
you can indulge yourself a bit.
As I say, I mean,
I don't know what that copy would be, by the way, about raw chicken in the gold market, but try it.
Well,
don't try the raw chicken. Cook the chicken before you try it.
No, what I was going to say, when I say do that, I don't do it. Like, I just inherently know the phrases, the keywords in my head that that want to be in there, but I'm writing the piece because I've done the work, because I know the purpose, because I know I've done the research is there. It's going to be almost like a safeguarding for young copywriters out there who go, I've written this piece, mister, and they go, it doesn't say peri peri chicken in it. Like, what are you doing, you mad?
We've got a bit of a problem with chicken.
Exactly.
Chicken and Bats. That would be the name of our.
No, I didn't have chicken.
That would be the name of our agency if we ever started one. Chicken and Bats. We'd have to change our names though.
That sounds wrong now, but carry on.
Presumably, by locking in the purpose, you tie off a lot of that stuff. And really, it's really if somebody's come up with an idea for a blog before they've come up with a purpose that you'll get into a trouble where it's like, well, I've written it about this because I thought it was really interesting, and actually somebody says, but it doesn't relate in any way to what we're doing. So that's true of all.
So you should be all right. And as I say, I mean, take it upon yourself to like be a crusader to point out how ridiculous and stupid SEO is, and how like ill thought through it is to just put the same word all the way through it and all this kind of stuff, and think that going on for ages is going to solve the problem. That's just a kind of playing chicken, but it is just hoping that people keep that you're not engaging them for that long. So it's better to kind of keep it engaging. So do that. Once you've done that, I would say with all of this stuff, I say it all the time with read aloud, but I would, and I'm sorry for the planet implications, but I would print it off and I would read it aloud. And I would do it with content pieces like this because they're very short, and it's the easiest time you're going to do this. Like, I've done it with a 10,000 word sales letter. That's laborious, and I understand why you might skip some of that. I'd still do it. I did it with a 80,000 word novel, and it makes you see so much stuff. But with a little piece like that, do it, because the chances are, if you're writing content for businesses, this is a way in. And if you take the time and read it aloud and write it really well, they're more likely to go, oh, I really like that. I enjoyed that piece. I was engaged by it. Can you do me more stuff? So it's more zooming out of why you're doing this as a copywriter.
But it's a valid career.
It's a really good chance. I wrote a piece. I'm working now doing a whole website project for a company, but I originally did one little blog post. But because I inherently write this stuff well, they were amazed by it. They've never seen a blog post like it. Sounds silly saying one like a blog post, but it was.
Was it about red wine from the Alsace region or Perry Poached?
And why you should bathe in it, yeah. But yeah, it's just, it's worth doing it with this. Also, it's good practice and it's good training. Like, you're not going to do it for everything, but this is the easiest time you're going to be able to do it.
On one level, all copywriting is about saying, hey, you, listen to me, and, like, get their attention and then talk to them in such a way that you keep it. I mean, yeah, there's technical levels of asking for money and things like that, but it's the core is the same.
Yeah,
right?
You're just trying to keep someone engaged through a piece of writing. So I think there's a lot of creativity to it. It's a good way to test your copywriting chops. I've never really understood the word chops used in that frame.
You went for it anyway.
I'm using it anyway. But it is a good way to like practice your skill. I don't think you did. I think you were lucky and managed. Oh no, you did like do a lot of time on e-letters and stuff. But when I first started, before I even wrote a long copy sales letter, I wrote a daily email. I wrote every day 500 to 1,200 words specifically to a reader. And I would not be the writer I am today without having
I would thoroughly recommend that to anybody who can, because, okay, it's not, I imagine in my head a blog post is slightly different because it might not have an email list, but we grew up writing, editorial or e-letters to an email list.
And ultimately that's all a content piece, a blog post. It's just a piece of editorial.
Yeah, but the fact that we were writing to email lists did help in the sense that it was us writing to an individual who could write back. It wasn't under a pseudonym. There was open email communication, back and forth. There's an inbox they could write back to, and that does hone your sense of audience and your sense of what people will respond to. And sometimes you would write stuff and you would just have a sense that nobody said anything back.
And sometimes you'd bore yourself.
Yes,
with what
you
you're
would.
writing.
Yeah.
And you did it because you had to get that email out that day. But with a content piece like this, if you're boring yourself, it ain't working. It's a bad thing. So you need to. It's all about engagement, and increasingly, there's a whole history of this stuff, and as you say, the SEO kind of world and what have you. But increasingly, the internet is only getting more and more. What's the word? Well, cleverer is not the word, but that will suffice for now. But it's getting more intuitive. It knows, it can tell when people are spending time reading this piece, and what that means is they're engaged, and that's the key thing. So it is about engagement and entertainment, I would say, over the actual kind of trying to pack it full of bullet points and all this kind of stuff, which people think they like because they haven't got any attention and all this kind of stuff. So it needs to be quick and get out there. No, it needs to be engaging and send you on your way, not quick and get out of there. You forget quick and get out of there. You remember engaging and on your way. It's technically the same thing, but it's not. It's engaging quickly and off you go, kind of thing.
I think that's probably a good time to wrap up. I would be interested in a future session in looking at the kind of rate side of things and negotiating with clients and all that stuff.
We should do that in the whole thing.
We're going to do a whole series of episodes on the sort of nuts and bolts of going freelance or getting started as a freelancer, negotiating royalties, rates, everything. So we'll do that down the line. But I found that interesting. I hope everybody watching at home did. And we're going to do more of these sort of deep dives on one specific type of copy. So if there's something that you want us to cover, Could be anything from subject lines to order forms to Facebook posts to, we'll pick the ones that we're interested in talking about, of course. But if there's something that you'd like to see us write about or talk about on an episode, then do get in touch and let us know, and we'll try and cover it in a future episode. But for today, I think we'll wrap things up. Thank you very much, Glenn.
Thank you.
By the way, we're not sponsored by anyone from the Alsace region or from Nando's and
Nando's. Oh, I'd love to be sponsored by Nando's. I've not been to Nando's for like 3 or 4 years, I think.
We're not going to be sponsored.
Ruth refuses to go. She's vegetarian, so it's understandable.
Yeah.
But yeah, maybe we should go to Nando's.
Maybe we should see if we should get some peri sponsorship. We don't have any sponsors. It's just us two sitting in a room talking about copywriting. But we'll wrap things up there for today. Thank you very much for joining us, and goodbye.
And there we have it. We hope you got something valuable out of today's episode of The Fix.
Maybe it sparked an idea or two for your next writing project. Maybe it triggered a new headline, opening line, or story to tell your reader.
Maybe it inspired you to scrap what you have and start over. Or maybe it made you want to submit your current work in progress for a little constructive feedback. If that is the case, send your copy to us at feedback@thefixcopywriting.com. Or if you don't want us to review a specific piece of writing, send us a problem you're trying to solve
or a challenge you want input on, and we'll do our best to help.
And remember, if you like The Fix, please do share it with other writers, business owners, and marketers.